right, it is 7 p.m. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to our Board of Education meeting for Wednesday, February 5th. First, I wanted to start the meeting by saying welcome again to Chief Sansom and Captain Laflamme. Thank you so much for joining us again to assist us with our presentations this evening. We also have a special guest from Simsbury to help us out and answer some additional questions. So thank you very much for joining us this evening. We really appreciate your assistance. I wanted to address a few things. We all know that right now there's a lot of change happening in the news. What I wanted to do is reassure everyone that we have our superintendent and assistant superintendent who are working within the communities and with the state in regard to any sort of information that may impact Granby in any way. Right now we're staying the course. We are doing what Granby would like us to do, and we will continue to handle things as we normally do. If things do become relevant or do implicate Granby in any way, appropriate communication will be sent out addressing such to everyone. So Superintendent Burke has done a fabulous job of sending out communications, including her very prompt communication in regard to the cancellation of school tomorrow. And she will continue to do so as things become relevant for Granby. Moving along to public comment. Granby community engagement and attendance at Board of Education public meetings is welcomed and encouraged. As is our custom, the board views public comment as an opportunity for members of the public to share their comments and concerns with the board, and board members will not be responding to comments or engaging in a dialogue. As it deems appropriate, the board may place such matters on the agenda for future meetings for discussion in accordance with the Freedom of Information Act. Procedurally, public remarks will be limited to 5 minutes, and speakers will be asked to identify themselves by name and address. We expect comments to be respectful and civil in tone, and we do not permit name-calling, raised voices, personal attacks, or vulgarity. Lastly, we note that the superintendent is responsible for student and personnel matters. No speaker will be permitted to use public comment to bring complaints against any teacher, student, or staff member, or to discuss student matters which are confidential. Therefore, the use of student, teacher, or staff names is not permitted. Any such complaints or concerns should be directed to the superintendent and her team. As is always our practice, we're going to start with public comment for anyone that's present in the room, and then we will move on to Zoom. If there's anyone on Zoom who wishes to make public comment, please be sure to enter so in the chat so we can make sure that we attend to your public comment.
Good evening, Mike Marenko, Notch Road, Granby. It's been a little while since I've been here. Kids want to thank you for canceling school tomorrow. They're excited. But something that was brought to my attention just a couple minutes ago, I heard that someone was on school property this afternoon handing out pamphlets. They did not get a copy of the pamphlet. It just said ICE at the top of it. My understanding was the person was inside the high school and outside trying to give them to kids and coaches after school. The person who told me said somebody told them they should leave school grounds, but what happened after they left, they don't know. I just think it's a safety issue. People being on school grounds inside the school, after hours. The other thing with safety is, I guess somebody who used to be here in town, I'm seeing, on social media, was arrested for an incident. I guess he's no longer here in town, but I guess it was a big deal online. People were talking about it. Just goes back to safety of the students and who we have around the students and stuff like that. I want to thank you for the communication, for all the incidences that have been going on. You guys have been prompt at letting us know what's going on, when it's going on and stuff. I understand you guys' hands are tied about follow-up communication. We'd like a little more follow-up communication if possible. I understand in some circumstances you guys can't. I'm also seeing Ellington Board of Education has written letters and sent some stuff to Governor Lamont regarding the Head Start School Lunch Program, trying to get it to be more healthy, trying to get some of the preservatives and stuff like that out of the food. Trying to get healthier options, fresh options for the kids in school. I think that's something we should look into also. Lastly is just protecting our teachers. I know it's been a couple months ago, I heard one student threw a bathroom pass and hit a substitute in the head. Substitute needed to get medical attention from the school nurse. I haven't heard anything about it afterwards, but I did hear it did happen, and I think we should be able to discipline students even if they have PPEs or whatever it is for violence against teachers. But with that, I'd like to thank you guys for everything you're doing, and have a good night.
Thank you. Is there anyone else in the room who wishes to make public comment? Going once? Going twice?
No, well, I just want to add one quick thing. Hold on. We got to be a school nutrition. So Julie Hafner, Haefner, 286 Simsbury Road, West Granby. Just with school nutrition, there is a farm to school grant that's usually in August, but I would encourage you to apply to that, and then you could use it for, because I love better nutrition for schools, but it just takes money. So to support our local farmers, but there is, about the grant.
We're
So, yeah.
already involved.
Oh,
Yep.
good. Okay, perfect. Good. All right, awesome. That's it. Thank you for all you do. Thank you for all you do. I'm happy to see you there. Yes. All right.
Thank you.
Oh, yeah. Yes.
Is there anyone online who wishes to make public comment? Going once? Going twice? All right, I'm closing public comment. We're we would be moving along to student representative reports, but both of our student reps were unable to attend this evening, so we look forward to them joining us next time. Then we'll have to give double a report then to see what's going on with our sports and other extracurriculars. Reports and discussion, small capital expenditures. I believe we have Mr. Christopher DeGray, our Director of Facilities, with us this evening to give us a rundown on what's going on with small cap. Welcome, Chris. Thank you for coming.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. For those members of the board I haven't had a lot of time to interact with, I'm Christopher DeGray, Director of Facilities. I'm coming up on about 4 months here at Granby. It's been a great experience. It's a great team, and I'm proud of the work we're doing. Prior to this role, I was the Executive Director of Facilities and Public Safety at Berkshire Community College for 3 years. Prior to that, for over 12 years, I was a Director of Facilities at Westfield State University, so I hope what little knowledge and experience I can help in Granby, I'd love to. What I'd like to do this evening is talk about a few of the things going on in Granby in regards to a couple of the initiatives we're going to be working on, and I'll give you some information and we'll open it up to some questions. First thing I would like to talk about is in relation to an indoor air quality mandate that Governor Lamont set in 2022. This is a requirement for all boards of education to evaluate the indoor air quality and heating, ventilation, and air conditioning systems to their respective school buildings. I just kind of wanted to give you a little bit of a feel of what that process is going to look like. Really kind of going by the parameters the state has set. There's a couple of big things we'd like to note about the changes to the statute for indoor air quality. The biggest one being that the boards of education statewide are now required to conduct an HVAC assessment for each public school building. Each school must complete its initial assessment every 5 years after the initial assessment. The HVAC inspection must be performed by certified testing, adjusting, and balancing technicians, a certified industrial hygienist or mechanical engineer, and at a minimum, satisfy the assessment tasks that listed in the Act. Originally, there was a deadline set for last year, January 1st, 2024. Fortunately, it's a really specialized type of business that does this extensive testing. And when you have an whole state looking to have it done, they were just overwhelmed. They clearly couldn't reach that benchmark. There was just not enough companies and bodies to go around. They re-extended again till 2025, and they were in the same problem. I think people I spoke to, they were only getting to about 20% of the schools. So they kind of regrouped, looked and said, what makes most sense to get this done quick, but to get it done in a timeline that's going to work for everyone. And what they did is they kind of expanded it over a 5-year period where they'd like to see 20% of the schools done every year. For most districts, that means one a year. The new deadline is June 30th, 2031. We have to make sure that the HVAC inspections are complete and the evaluations are done by then, and all will be assessed. The second part of that is indoor air quality testing. They now have to be done annually, starting this last year for every school. Additionally, the EPA's indoor air quality tools for school program is now required, which is now just not preferred. It has to be done, and those inspections are underway. And lastly, the act includes a lot of kind of definitions of key terms to better inform the IAQ and HVAC requirements. So I believe in attending a prior meeting, we're trying to navigate around this. We want to make sure we're compliant. So what we did was we reached out to a vendor we use when we have air quality issues, if we have complaints of mold or anything across the whole district, and just kind of said, what are you seeing in the industry? What should we do? What should we expect? And they kind of gave us some numbers. There was a little bit of sticker shock between the schools. So luckily, Nikki has a lot of experience, and we kind of put our heads together. We reached out to some collaborators across the state and realized, on this, we're going to have to get multiple quotes. We may have to look at bids, and we really just kind of started a lot of conversations. And we're seeing, even so far, I'm just reaching out to a couple vendors, a lot of fluctuation. But still in that, it's a lot of money because it's just for the assessment. We're finding they can range from $50,000 upwards of $200,000. And the question I'm hearing is, what do we get for that? Well, what they'll come in and do for the indoor air quality testing is there will be over 70 individual testing metrics that must be taken and documented, covering categories that include reviewing outdoor intakes, obstructions, pollutant sources, system cleanliness, air handling, rooftops, top to bottom. And these are things we would schedule during non-school times, because we need access several days to all of these areas. So on the air quality testing, and I believe it's included in this packet, as well as some of the verbiage from the state mandate, SB 287, about the HVAC. There's a ventilation checklist, just to give you a little bit of an idea of just the air quality portion of it, which again has over 70 metrics. So certainly we want to be very thorough on this, and we want to do the right thing. So we want to make sure we've got proper vendors, we're doing the right work, and most importantly, we're finding a path to remediation, because you hear Michael, it's everywhere, and we want to make sure that we're keeping our staff, students, and visitors safe. For the HVAC testing, it's quite more extensive. They're going to bring in a crew, whoever we bring. They're going to bring in engineers. They're going to test for maximum filter efficiency, measure outdoor air rates, verify ventilation component operations. They're going to look at all of our VRVs, our RTUs, which are our rooftop units. They're going to verify all of our operating metrics. If you've ever had someone come in and kind of do a tune-up in your house of your whole HVAC system and it hasn't been done in years, they're going to give you pages and pages of reports, and they're all things that we're going to submit to the state. They're going to verify our control sequences, carbon dioxide sensors, and then they're going to collect all this field data. So those are all things we're currently working on. Right now, we're seeking out multiple quotes from vendors because we do want to be fiscally responsible while at the same time making sure we're performing this work. Luckily, the vendors we're reaching out to do have availability as early as this summer, because it's more spread out, and each district only has to do about one school a year. So we're going to be very thorough and very cooperative with that. And we're in the same boat as every other town. They're like, what do we do? Where do we go? What's going on? So within the past couple of weeks, the state released a whole series of webinars that facilities folks are going to be attending for about 2 hours every week for 3 or 4 weeks. That's going to cover every question. They're going to have their legal teams. They're going to, they start on the 12th. Going over everything from the IAQ testing to how we should go about the best practices. And there's also, and the state doesn't have all this information out, there's a lot of verbiage in all of the mandates about grants to reimburse towns and cities. So that's something Nikki and I are going to work hand in hand on. So hopefully that will help lessen. They don't have a lot of the paperwork ready because this is all so new, but we certainly are going to research and take advantage of anything we have in regards to that. So that's kind of my presentation on the first part regarding the air quality and the HVAC. Are there any questions from anyone?
Thank you so much for going through all that. And before I open it up to the board, I just wanted to, Yeah, I think you were selling yourself a little bit short in the beginning when you said you were going to bring up a little bit of knowledge that you have from Westfield here. You've brought a wealth of knowledge, and we really appreciate everything that you're doing for us. It's been great. And just to clarify before I open it up, the state has put this in, we have to do this, but we, of course, are not given the money to do this. We have to fund it ourselves. And if there's any sort of repairs that need to come out of it, that is also something we would have to fund ourselves. So just to clarify for anybody who's watching this later or anybody's interested, when we speak of unfunded mandates and such that come from the state, this is a perfect example of one of those items. And obviously, it's something that's good for kids and good for our teachers. We want good air quality. We want it to be healthy, but it's just a perfect example of that sort of situation. So, does anybody on the board have any questions?
Do we know how long this test takes on average?
Per school, only a couple of days. Somewhere like the high school, the feedback I'm getting is it might be 3 to 4 days of testing, and then a couple weeks to compile metrics and results and prepare reports for us. Some of the smaller schools may be 1 to 2 days, given full access if we do it at a time where there's no classes and nobody around, just so they can have access to the roofs, the vents, go into areas and spaces with ladders, boiler rooms, look at air quality, airflow, things like that.
And this checklist that we have, this is pretty much it, right? What they're looking for?
That's very similar. So our hygienist who works with us a lot, some of you may know Kevin from Platform, he reached out to the state, and that's one of the checklists that they recommended that they use. So they would come in and they would use that. And that specific one is for indoor air quality, and there's a couple different metrics for the HVAC one, but that will be more extensive and more, they'll have computerized equipment for testing, so they've got more computerized metrics for that.
Okay. I
The
guess sticker shock.
expectation is that you only do one school a year? Did I hear that right?
Right now, they've stretched it out to allow, every school district can do it at whatever pace they want, but for grant purposes, for the purposes of being able to put these companies that are limited that can do these services, it would be one a year for the next couple of years, but the total deadline is June 30th, 2030.
Do we anticipate any additional expenses as a result of the tests?
So it's like going to the mechanic for an oil change.
Look at
So
Ali's
while you're at it, do that
Yeah.
7-point inspection. Certainly, it could be things as simple as belts, or they could find issues with the air quality and how the venting systems are working and things like that. We're really not going to know, but I would guess you're going to find something. So, we would want to be strategic about what order we do the schools in, and based on expenses and time, so we can certainly start planning the portion where we would have to make any repairs and amendments.
But
Yeah,
to
I'm
the
just-
best of, sorry.
No, go ahead.
To
No,
the best of our knowledge, we are currently current with all expectations.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, it's not per se like a violation issue, it's just
No.
a testing of the metrics of, oh, it's warm in here, well, they're going to give 30 air metrics of what pollutants might be in the air and things like this, and do various air quality testings. And I've worked with some of the companies and extensively in my prior employment, and they're very thorough, and they produce a ton of metrics for us to work off of, and they're very good about recommendations. Here's the short-term fix, here's a long-term fix, so it's not a go do this in the next month or so.
The sticker shock is the only thing, because I'm looking at some of these items over here, like ensure that air is flowing towards the exhaust intake. Those are things that you would think, like if a blower motor is on, you can feel it, right? And then some of these seem to be subjective, where ensure the unit ventilators are quiet enough to accommodate classroom activities, but they don't give you a decibel reading or anything. So it's kind of subjective.
Right, well,
Whose
they'll
opinion is
have
that?
decibel meters and they'll have readings.
Oh, so there is a decibel reading that they want you to follow, but it's just not on here.
Correct.
Okay.
But most of those, for especially the HVAC, will follow those.
Yeah.
They're used to using them in the hospital industry.
Yeah, it's just, I don't know. I guess the sticker shock, because they're like, check airflow here, check airflow there. It's kind of like, the system's working. I'm not, by all means, I want my kids breathing in healthy air. But it's just,
Yeah. So all these results get reported into the state?
yes.
And then is there, I don't know if this is a far-fetched question, but is there of the 20% of schools that were done in this past year? Is there data available? Like on average, the average finding was X at the cost of Y. Is there anything like that, or is that like it is so case by case that that's really impossible to even?
I think it's going to be specific to the buildings, their history, the mechanicals of the systems for each place. Certainly, newer schools have a lot more computerized systems that their facility staff can operate from their phones and apps and things like that. And it seems like everybody's kind of behind the eight ball trying to just find these companies because the testing companies have availability. But when we reached out to some of them back in November, when I first started, they said we really need till the beginning of the school year, the new calendar year, to really even look at our availability because we're getting swamped. And then when they made that amendment that we have that 5-year gap, it kind of gave everyone, no pun, a little bit of breathing room to figure things out. So I think it's really going to be different for everyone. However, buried in the full mandate is that it has to be presented to the public. The Board of Education has to put it on their website, so it will be transparent. So as we start to see results from other districts, we can kind of call that information and see and start some collaboration if they're having some of the same issues, some of the same challenges. And when I was getting ready to leave my last job, we were getting ready to do a roof project on our library. And for the whole 3 years I was there, it was 6 to 9 weeks of lead time on all HVAC. And then last summer, there was just an explosion in the market of being able to have these parts. And now it jumped to 58 weeks. So the library project that was supposed to start right before I left is not going to start till sometime next fall. So there will certainly be an influx of that. And that's probably going to need to have some consideration from the state as well. We've got these things that need to be corrected, but we can't correct them if we don't have the tools, if we don't have the supplies, if the materials aren't there. So I think it's going to be a learning process for everybody.
I have a question, but I don't think it's for you, Chris. I think it might be more for Sherry or Jen. I'm looking at the text of the bill, and it looks like the state is authorizing the Department of Administrative Services to award grants for some of the work to be done. Does that exist?
So oftentimes we will see these types of documents and they identify elusive grants. We've not yet had any concrete information about grants that are available, but we absolutely will keep our eye on that. Nikki has her connections across her Connecticut Association of Business Managers, and we are watching really closely, but so far there have not been any grants awarded, but we would certainly take advantage of them if there is.
And I believe because of the size of the magnitude statewide, they're actually going to dedicate a website and a portal
Yeah,
for
where
that,
you can-
which they're still building for
Yeah.
the mandate that's already in place.
Right. So the mandate came first.
Yes.
All the webinars just opened like this week. We've been inundated with information. So again, the timing of the way that the +1 happens, we chose the biggest school and the biggest number because we had no idea what was going to be expected of us. And now we're calling all the details and engaging in the webinars and working with our respective organizations to have a fine-tuned number and more detailed expectation for us in the coming year. So we should have that very, very soon.
Yes. We've
Thanks,
already
Chris,
received- We've already received a couple quotes on that. Any other questions on the air quality HVAC? Okay, one other thing I just wanted to touch base on really quick, and this started before I was there, was some discussions that have taken place about replacing the oil tanks at Kelly and Wells. And I've looked over some of the quote material that's come in from the vendors last spring, and I think there was also some sticker shock there, because I believe that the total for Kelly came in at $154,000, and for Wells came in at a little less than that, 158. So, and I know there was just some discussion, and we've tried to do some research because a tank was removed, I believe, from Kearns, and kind of tracing back to the town, and Lemelin out of Chicopee, who kind of does this for a living. It looks like after we handed the building back to the city, they did it. Not sure if internally or not. We haven't found any billing, but we're still trying to reach out to Kirk Severance to get some more information. He seems to have some of that, but I know there were some numbers thrown out that, like, to have a tank removed is 6,000, 7,000, 8,000, and that's correct. That probably sounds about right. And in these quotes, that's also about how much it costs. It's everything else that's involved in I know you have a big agenda, so I'm just going to give a brief overview. You're looking at taking out oil tanks, but you're also looking at now building an above-ground 2,000-gallon propane tank, which means a concrete pad, which means fencing, which means conversion kits, which means filling the propane tank. So there's a lot of heavy equipment involved. The tank itself in both cases is over $33,000. And then when I just did a really quick high-level look across, when I looked at these 5, 6, 7-page quotes where it's the equipment operator and all the heavy machinery. One was 50,000, the other, that was for Kelly, Wells was 39,000. There's soil testing and analysis. We do have yearly testing, so there's no concerns of any leaks, any EPA issues. But certainly we'll go through that entire process. When you look at temporary fencing, that couple $1,000s adds up. When you look at the asphalt, gravel, subgrade, as opposed to Kearns, where we took it out, filled it with dirt, walked away. Wells is 17,000 and Kelly is over 16,000. When you get into the installation of the above ground tank, the fencing and bollards, landscaping, things like that, those run over 30,000. So again, the concrete work alone, there's just a lot of moving parts, and it certainly will be more transparent as we go along. And if approved in the process, we'll get updated quotes. We'll look at multiple vendors. But I just kind of wanted to give a really 30,000-foot view of what that looks like. Now on our end, why are we doing this? Well, more from an energy saving standpoint, propane produces far less BTU than oil, less impact on the environment. And in talking to my staff and my number 2 everywhere I go, Dale Kinnison, our controllers that we have on a lot of these units, some HVAC, some are oil tanks, we've actually been reaching out, kind of replacing and fixing piecemeal. And we've been told this technology is going to go away in 3-5 years. And it means you can't go on eBay, go on some website, some old shop. We're physically not going to have the means to control some of our HVAC and our oil tank system. So it's kind of a matter of trying to stay ahead of the curve, stay up with industry standards, and update what we can when we can. So it's not a matter of an oil tank had an issue or the controller stopped working, it's full of oil, and now we can't use it. And God forbid that happens during a winter season like we're having now. So it's just a matter of I'm trying to continue the work that those before me have done, and Nikki and Sherry and Dale and the whole team, and give you guys an idea and be as transparent when we have big ticket items like this, to inform you when you're making your decisions, budget and otherwise. Any questions?
Thank you for that clarification. That's very helpful.
Yeah, on both of them, the tank removal, just that alone, I don't want to say only, it's $6,758.94 for each of them. So that's just for, and if they were taking them out, that's about what it would be, but it's the whole conversion and the remaining work that we have to do to make the schools more efficient.
Makes sense.
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you for your time.
Thank you. I do not envy the webinars that you're going to have to consider, but thank you for doing all that.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chris.
All right, moving on to Section 6, Business Requiring Action, the School Resource Officer Program Presentation. Superintendent Burke.
Thank you. And so for this evening, I think I'm going to stay in my seat because I have 3 gentlemen accompanying us this evening, and I want them to have an opportunity to come to the podium to answer any questions or engage in the conversation. I don't want it to be too crowded over there. So first and foremost, I want to thank Chief Sansom, Captain Laflamme, and tonight with us also is Sergeant Todd Cushman from Simsbury Police Department. And Sergeant Cushman was recently a school resource officer, and we thought it would be wonderful to have our neighboring police force here with us tonight to talk a little bit about your experience. So thank you very much for coming. So what I'd like to do this evening is provide a deeper dive into some of the details of the program, and provide for you the results of the survey that we held for our community members to weigh in on how they really feel about this program and what questions they may have, what concerns they may have. And so, just to remind you of the goals of this particular program: create and maintain the safest school environment that we can, establish cooperative relationships between our students and the police, prevent juvenile delinquency, work to really promote positive outcomes for our students along the lines of interactions and building relationships. We did speak last time about the duties of an SRO. In the survey, there were a number of questions about the duties, understanding the role and the responsibilities. And so I hope that people will take time to review our first presentation where we really went into depth on some of this. But I wanted to repeat a couple of the most important aspects of our previous conversation, really around the idea that the SRO absolutely will be supporting us in a broad variety of ways. And you see some of them here from an educational perspective, certainly from an engagement perspective, and then also helping and working in concert with our administrators and our faculty to hold our students, in the safest regard, and intervening when necessary if crimes are occurring. A school resource officer is just as important as what they are. There were questions submitted to us through the survey about the SRO being involved in disciplinary matters. And there were some concerns shared around escalating those responses to student discipline matters with the presence of a law enforcement officer. And so this first little what it's not is really important. A school resource officer is not responsible for maintaining school discipline. That is very much the job of the school faculty. They are not there to enforce school rules. School rules are school rules, and we have accountability and measures in place to make sure that they're followed. They're also not taking the lead with searching or personal property and those kinds of things. Again, this is really the responsibility of the school administration. Bullying, we follow a very specific procedure for bullying. We take that very seriously. The school resource officer would be a member of the team because perhaps there are criminal acts happening in this regard, use of social media or harassment, and that would escalate to the purview of the school resource officer. But we want to maintain support for our students at the lowest level possible, and only escalate to a school resource officer if and when we suspect or we know for certain that a crime has been violated. Is that accurate? I see you shaking your head, Chief Sansom. Okay. And you may remember that we did talk about a graduate response and how we would respond to behaviors. That's a working document that we will continue to look at and revise together if this position comes to fruition. But on Chief Sansom's recommendation from his past experiences, we intend to put everything in writing so that it's very clear and transparent, and there would be training and professional learning opportunities for both the school resource officer and our Granby staff so that we are all coming from the same perspective and understanding around this new position in our school district. And so I would like to invite Sergeant Todd Cushman to the podium, if you would. And I just, did a little search for some nice photos of you in your work. And I do even have a very brief video that will play.
Hi, I'm School Resource Officer Todd Cushman. School Resource Officer Trevor Patel. Just a reminder that this Wednesday, school starts again here in Civic Grade. Just remind you to be careful around the bus stops, your morning commutes, and your afternoon commutes. Looking forward to seeing you on the first day.
And I saw you did a number of those little videos.
Haircut is not a requirement.
So Sergeant Cushman, as I was doing research into this proposal initially, I certainly learned from our neighboring police force and school districts. And Superintendent Matt Curtis speaks very highly of yourself and the other officers that have served in this role. I think that it would be really beneficial for our community and our Board of Ed to just hear a little bit from you very informally about the role from your perspective, some of the benefits, some of the things maybe to watch out for. And then, Chairperson Monica, I thought it might be appropriate to offer any questions from the board at that time as well.
Absolutely,
Okay.
as long as that's okay with you. Sergeant.
Okay.
All right.
Great.
Can you go back to the previous slide?
Yes, I can try to.
Maybe.
Catherine, I might need you to do that for me. Thank you.
So I guess
I know these questions are routine every time we talk about SRO or an alternative school, because you're really, lack of a better term, you're forcing two different viewpoints on the world together. And I remember when I started, it was initially almost every time I went into a building, what's wrong? Why are you here? What happened? Until people get used to routinely, this individual is going to be in the building to say hello, because prior to having any one of these roles, the only reason you'd be in the school is for a medical call, something happened, and that's the vision. And there's definitely that concern even now before if this gets implemented. So just quickly, just giving a different viewpoint on the concerns that are up there, responsible for school discipline. We don't do school discipline. We're not involved in school discipline. I was there for 10 years. I never had a hand in any discipline. I can't suspend anybody, no detentions. I would like to. I had my own thoughts, but that is not what you're there for. Do we encourage kids to follow the school rules and policies? Absolutely. What I looked at it, when I started, both of my kids were second and fourth grade. And my responsibility was our middle school and all 5 elementary schools. So the benefit for me was I was right in that realm with that age bracket of kids that I had at home and that I'm dealing with. So whether it was social media things that my kids had already messed up and I could bring to the school and tell other kids not do that, don't do that, or vice versa. I learned a lot more from being in the schools to bring home, to tell my kids what they would never be doing. So, school discipline, we're not there for that. School rules and policies, we're not enforcing, but we definitely encourage it. As you spoke to, you're part of the team, you're part of the administration, you're part of the staff, but you're also part of the community with the kids, parents, grandparents. It becomes unbelievable how many connections you make just being in this role that has nothing to do with being a police officer, just being there in that environment. Searches of students' lockers, backpacks, no. And that is something that going into this role, and I would suggest if it happens, like you just spoke to, there needs to be a meeting before with what's the expectations, what are the guidelines, because again, when you're a patrol officer, we have our guidelines, we have our rules, our regulations, our protocols that we are strict to follow and how we handle things, and it's typically an individual. We're assigned to a call, we handle that call, we follow the rules that we're trained on. Going into a school, I know that there are completely different rules and about 20 more layers that we have to understand that are going to happen. So as far as the searches and stuff like that, I would say I've done tons of searches of kids who lost their cell phone. Cell phone that got taken. And those are definitely searched. Backpack, where'd you forget it? Where's your lunch bag? Did you forget your water bottle? So yeah, I've definitely done a lot of those, but not of what the concern is, of searching for personal items, doing investigations on our own. Those are not for us to do unless there is a safety concern. And again, that's a discussion that needs to be had so everybody's on the same page. If this is the scenario, I need to be there to assist with that. If this is the scenario, you guys go ahead and do that. Let me know if you want me to observe. I could be in the area, but that is not for us to initiate. Cases of bullying, I'm glad you brought that up because a lot of parents thought if their child is being bullied, that's a police investigation. And oftentimes we have to separate the two. If you're considering a bullying investigation, you need to go through the schools. If there's a criminal component to it, that piece would come to us. And sometimes those investigations go on at the same time. Or if it's a criminal and that's the most serious thing, then we'll handle that piece while the school is handling the bullying side of it. We are not an employee of the school district, but we are heavily involved in what the schools are doing. And sometimes it's hard to look at and see that there's a separation. When I was at ESSER, we were assigned our own work phones. And I would get calls on the way home from work on a Saturday, on a Sunday, and that would be from both sides. We had formed our patrol officers, our sergeants, everybody on the road, while they're out and about dealing with, I'll call it somebody's house, dealing with a kid, a family with service needs, whatever it may be. If they had an incident with a student in Simsbury, we would like to know about it, criminal or otherwise. Because that helped us that following day in school. That helped us with identifying, all right, this group of kids and this group of kids are not getting along. So when we're in school, maybe preventing a bullying thing going on or knowing about it because we saw it in the cafeteria that day, and then now something sparks at a playground, something sparks online, we already kind of know about it. And I think what never gets seen when we do these stats and surveys, and I've been through a ton of them, is what's prevented. There's never a stat, you'll never find one, it's never there, of an SRO being in the building or around kids or around schools, what you prevented, because you'll never know. So while you're there, and I remember we did a state surveys too, because at one point, some people in the state wanted to eliminate SROs completely. So there was a survey that went around with that, and all of us as SROs just kept going back to, you could point to, the things that happened, or you cannot account for what was prevented just by relationships alone. That somebody came to us and told us something was going to happen, they were concerned about somebody, and then whatever that concern was did not happen. So that's a very important, you're never going to see in a survey is what was prevented because of the relationships that were built between the SRO and school. And again, probably more importantly, the SRO and the families and the kids. I think the vision is what the vision is, and I get the concerns, but I think the reality is a typical day would be get to the middle school, kids arrive, you're outside just saying hello, making jokes with the kids, and if you have a favorite team and they're on the other side, that's going to be a problem. We're going to go back and forth with that until we get that straightened out. Brothers not holding the door for their sisters on the way in, got to instruct that. People live in the cafeteria and asking please to go to the bathroom instead of 15 people show up. There's a lot of little things that go into that are never going to be on that survey. That, it's, and I'll speak to, like, I told you, you can hide from the camera, but you're not hiding. Mrs. Tanis and I worked in Simsbury for quite a while, and there was a lot of going back and forth, comparing notes, text messages like, hey, we think this is happening. Was it a bullying complaint? Was it a crime? No, but knowing the kids, knowing the environment, knowing what she is capable of doing, who she can contact, who I've already dealt with, a lot of times it led to just fixing it before it got to anything I needed to do or anything they as administrators needed to do. And even, again, not on the list is working with the kids with special needs. Typically on patrol, we would be dispatched to that residence for something that has escalated to a point where either the family thinks they need our help, family member, community member needs our help. It's very difficult for an officer to show up and have no background, no idea what the student or the individual needs, what they're going through, what they like or they don't like, how do you interact with them. As an SRO, you're right there. You're dealing with that community, knowing what they like, what they don't like. We can speak to parents about how would you like an officer to approach that at your house. Here in school, we have social workers, we have many teachers, we have staff. When we get to that house, it's us and our training, and typically the parents or the family, or if they're out in a store, you have community watching us. So it speaks to the training that an SRO would have, but also the informal training of just being in that environment and knowing different approaches to how to handle that. So we have worked on a few times advising parents to contact the police department and have them put in we call it our CAD notes. So if we were dispatched or an officer was dispatched to their house for their child, to kind of, what do they want to see? What do they want the officer to know? That comes through the relationship in the schools, where that's putting our officers in a better spot, responding to that, because they have a better insight into what to do, how to handle this versus just go in and sometimes what you're seeing is not an aggressive person, but if we don't know that, we go with what we know. I think it's really a year-round, even though school's out. We are part of our cadet program, which is, we actually have at least one, now he's in college, from Granby. That cadet program, we have our junior police academy that we do a week in the summer. So we try and constantly stay in contact and around the kids all year to, again, develop that relationship. And it really make an impact on myself. Going to high school graduation now is much different than directing traffic or let's get these people out of here. Summer's going to start. Now you know all these kids. You're taking pictures with them. They reach back out. I've had probably 5 or 6 kids that have gone through that are now officers, and you're in contact with them. So and even if they don't, again, now being a sergeant going back on the road, stopping them on a traffic stop, going to their house for an incident. It's doing an interview of somebody that you've known since they were 6. It's a mixed reaction. Sometimes they don't want what they consider probably their dad doing I don't want it has to be you. Like, can I talk to somebody else? Because it's like talking to their father. They'd like to tell somebody else. And then other times, families are like, oh, thank God it's you. Like, can you just talk to them? And so there's the connections have been fantastic that I would not have had the opportunity to do just being on the road. So it's a lot more than I get the concerns, but there's a lot more to it. And even, the friendships with the staff that are ongoing, it was tremendous. The only reason I left was promotion, and they don't come around too often, so.
I saw the video footage of your announcement that you were going to leave the school. There were a lot of tears from everyone involved.
That was a tough day.
Yeah, I saw that.
Yeah, and that was, when typically it's done in a room like this and you get promoted and you got, a few people and then it's over. But the school had said, hey, can you do it here during the day? And I already knew I was not going to make it through that, but it was awesome.
It was really amazing to see. I encourage people to take a look. May I ask a quick question of you while you're here? You mentioned that you did Henry James, the middle school, and a number of elementary schools. And one of the questions that has come through the survey and community members have voiced to us is we are proposing the hiring of one SRO. We have 4 school buildings. We have 2 elementary schools, a middle and high, which is on a shared campus. I think you're familiar. What could you share with us about sharing your time across multiple buildings? How you went about developing a schedule. I know you shared maybe starting at the earliest opening school. Could you just give us your insights on that?
Not easy.
Yeah.
Henry James started at like 10 after 7, so that was earlier than the elementary school, and that was right down the road from the PD. So it has to be it builds up. So we'll have, like, beginning of the school year would typically be like bus safety programs. And then every school would want to do, either you come out to them as the bus arrives and you go over bus safety rules with the kids. Some schools would want to do a presentation, you bring the kids in, the bus is already gone. Sometimes it's another video to just put on the website about bus safety, period. Internet safety programs. Some schools would do, trying to think what they call it, but basically like community service projects for the elementary schools. So eventually it rolled into knowing around what time of the year elementary schools will be doing certain programs. I liked to go to the elementary schools and just go during lunch or recess. My wife is an educator in elementary school, so I was told, do not go into one of those classrooms unless you're invited in an elementary school during the day because the class is over.
Yeah.
So I learned, go to the cafeteria, let them get a little noisy in there, go to recess where they have free time to roam around and you're not as much of a distraction. So you got to navigate. There's really no set schedule, but there is a tremendous value of being known in the elementary schools with those kids, and then by the time they get to the middle school, they already know you, and you've met them, and you have those relationships. It makes it easier moving forward. So it's not going to be easy if there's one for all of those things. I think elementary-wise, you're probably dealing with more, as far as my experience, a little more maybe kids like eloping the campus, more parent-child incidences versus the high school is more of the bigger kids causing their own problems. And the middle school doing a little bit of both because they can't figure out exactly which one they should be yet. But the relationships you build in the elementary schools that carry up through the middle school and into the high school, it's very important that they're in the elementary schools. And at that age, they still think the uniform school. And you're not that annoying yet. So it's good to make that bond early and try and keep that going up through the middle school so it's already established once you get there.
Thank you.
Does anyone on the board have any questions?
I have a question. I think it's in today's climate, parents are a little on edge when something occurs at a school or they start to hear something or we've had a couple lockdowns this year. When there's an SRO in the school system, what does an emergency response look like for you?
Well, I'll go back just a tad bit and say, so those are the things that we're involved. So with the school administrators, not so much planning what day they're going to happen or how they're going to happen, but giving a different perspective why we're doing these things. Because there's a lot of apprehension about lockdowns versus fire drills. Fire drills will do 20 in a week, nobody will skip a beat, and it's very unfortunate, but lockdowns are a part of the school year now. So it's really helping the administrators on my end, answering questions for the staff. Why are we doing this? Why should I do that? Why do I, and just explain the other side of it. Explaining our role, God forbid something did happen, versus a staff role. What we tried to work towards, especially in the middle school, instead of having the same group, so if you called a practice lockdown or a drill, and you had the same people run that all over and over and over again, those people in the classrooms never get to see why they're talked about, why you didn't put the door covering on, you didn't shut the door, you didn't lock the door. To get a better overall view of why we're doing what we're doing is switching up who goes with us to check the doors, check the building, check because it answers a lot of questions that people have when they're involved in looking at it. They can see why we need that window covered, why you should be in that area. So being in there, it's a lot of trying to make it routine and not, it's still going to be a concern. It's still scary when we have to call one. But while we're practicing it, while we're discussing it, again, trying to just explain why. And a lot of times, hopefully that dispelled a lot of, not the fear, because they're never going to get rid of it, but the why. Why are we doing this? Why we need to do it, why it's important. And same for the kids, like elementary school kids, going into classrooms while we're doing that, it would be more just like trying to explain, kind of watering it down to be, this is play hide and go seek, be quiet until the game's over kind of deal. Not trying to dismiss it, but make it more acceptable for them to practice and handle that. I don't know if that answers the.
Sort of, in a non-emerg, I mean, in an actual emergencies, not in a non-drill, actual emergency situation, are you the first one there to assess the situation? Is, like,
If that's not a drill, you
If it's
mean.
not a
If it's
drill,
not a
if-
drill.
like if
Well,
the building's in lockdown.
God forbid, let's say I was physically at the building where it takes place. I'm going to where the issue is. Everybody out, like that lockdown should be called and they have to do exactly what we started practicing. I am now, my attention is completely on facing whatever the threat is. That's it. And then everybody else that's coming screaming to help me do that, that's the protocol.
Yep.
Same with if it's a patrol officer and God forbid something happened in the building and they're outside, they're doing the same thing. So my role then changes into doing exactly what we need to do if I'm at the building, if I'm not at the building. So our role, God forbid, something that does not change.
Okay.
That's why we need the school staff and the kids to do what they're doing. I can't help with that piece. I have to go direct to the threat.
Got it.
We have other questions?
I actually have
Be the same way in Granby. That's a normal protocol.
I have a question. So when you're in the school, you have your walkie on? You know, when you're in the school. So if there's something going on outside in the community, you would know about it, which would be helpful because I teach at St. Mary's in Simsbury.
You
And
talked about the other day?
Yeah.
Yeah.
We didn't know about it. It was kind of scary to not know that there was an armed robbery right across the street from our school.
Yeah, there's a lot of instances, again, and you have to be careful when we have our radios on and you're in a classroom or a cafeteria.
Kids
and
here.
a student hears their home address, come over the radio for whatever, or a car accident and it's somebody's relative in the school. There are times I had an earpiece in so that I could hear what was going on the radio, but it didn't project out to everybody else. It was also great in the cafeteria because it was so loud in there. This thing does not go up high enough. And if I radioed something in just being in the cafeteria, every other officer would be like, "You okay? Like, what's going on?" And I'm like, "It's just teenagers eating lunch." So yeah, we had two different, when I was in the schools, primarily we're in our full uniform. We did move to having considerably a softer uniform, so like a polo shirt and BDUs. For certain occasions, I was also a mountain bike officer, so that would be shorts and a polo shirt. So if we did like a bike and walk to school event at one of our elementary schools, I'd probably be in that. And speaking to the HVAC, also very important for an officer in school to have some AC with all the layers on. So, awesome. It wasn't in the presentation, but that's big time. Because it gets a little warm. And the smells, too. Kids are warm, not good.
You got to give those lectures about wearing deodorant.
Yeah, a lot in the hallway. So yeah, that's not on the list of what we do. But yeah, maybe a little bit of, hey, you ever hear this? So you take on a lot of roles that none of them are on the list, but I think you mold into an additional parent, an advocate, somebody to go to for just routine stuff. Stayed away from guidance because a lot of relationship stuff, it's a lot to take in. So I don't know if we do, if there was something in the community that we hear going on near the school, typically that would be me calling that particular principal and say, hey, going to a lockout and I'll head down there and hang out with them. We had a few of those where things in the area, or I would just call over the radio and say, I'll head to whatever school that's in the area and hang with them, so that there's somebody that they can communicate with. And
So you literally have a resource.
correct.
Yeah, that's great.
But, if that's an option, but yeah, we would have the radios on, communicate with everybody, and then a debrief after. what we could have done better, why did we do it that way? And that's another piece, like, I did not going into this think I would be in so many meetings with the superintendent of schools, assistant superintendents, district-wide teams for safety teams, with the psych and social worker teams. I did not, that wasn't in the brochure when I took the position, but I think that helped me now be a supervisor to kind of step back from and see a bigger picture. Because that's a lot of what you're doing is kind of interacting and trying to figure out, okay, we had this issue with this school. I don't like that it went that way. Why'd you do that? And we have to both kind of, again, say, well, if this is the scenario, I don't have a choice for my protocols. If this happens, I'm willing to try it that way, but know that if it gets to this point, I now have no option. So there was a lot of that, because things come up that you didn't talk about, you didn't plan, and it's a lot of having those conversations of ironing that out. And even if there's not complete agreement, just an understanding of, okay, if it goes this route, like, we got it, we know we're gonna have to go that route. And some of that will speak to the fears about what does it look like. You need to be just open with, if this X, Y, and Z happens, here's our protocol, we have to do it. And then kind of getting to mold those two together.
Really like the idea of the earpiece, though, so that the kids don't necessarily hear what's coming over the walkie, because that alone can be very unnerving and frightening to students.
Yeah, and
Always listening.
yeah, and it is interesting because we get so used to it that it's not for us hearing whatever the scenario is coming over. We may not really even react other than, yeah, 10-4. And then you look around the room and everybody's like, what did they say?
Yeah.
Like, what happened? So you do, but again, going in, that's not something that's on your radar because you're numb to it. You're just listening. And then you're kind of impressed sometimes that they understood what was said and your coworkers had no idea what was being said on them. So a little bit of both, but yeah, the earpiece was nice for a while, and then we changed radios and you got to change adapters and all.
Chief Sansom, I assume that this is this is an example of something when you said that we would define what Granby's way might be. So radio, no radio, soft uniform, those are all the things that we would work towards a united decision if the SRO program is adopted by the board tonight. Those are the details that we would work out, correct?
Yes, yeah. Yeah, me and the Chief of Simsbury, we differ on a few things with SRO programs, just from experiences and stuff. And yeah, we're gonna rely heavily on, if it's not okay with me and the board and you, then we don't do it. It's our program, it's not my program. It's our program, and that's why it's so good to have the MOAs and set those expectations. We got the best here tonight, so I'm glad he came, because Sarge really understands how it works and how it's supposed to work. So we didn't talk about arrests, and we didn't talk about, it's about relationship building and being that advocate. And I use advocate a lot, you used it a lot tonight too, and that's really the philosophy behind it.
Yeah, I think that's one of the key call-outs that I wanted to kind of highlight, taking back on what you said and what Heather was talking about. In this current climate, right, there's a lot of things that just aren't tangible. So speaking to that, we can count how many lockdowns we've had. But I don't think you'll ever be able to quantify, well, because of having this SRO present, whatever incident, real, fake, whatever, was mitigated because of having this SRO present, right? So it almost becomes thankless at one point. We appreciate it. But I think that's just like the dynamic of it, that you'll just never know. But in the back of your mind, there's like a sense of peace.
And when I remember early on, parking a patrol car out in front of an elementary school before there was an SRO at elementary school. The secretary at that school would get phone calls, what's going on? Why is there an officer in your school? What happened? Then it got to the point, if my car wasn't outside, is he not coming today? Why is he not I saw him this morning over here, but he's not, he was here yesterday. And so it becomes this, it almost flips as to now the expectation, why are you not over here today? The kids will definitely let you know if they haven't seen you in a week, that you haven't been there. But again, that speaks to, like, if you go to the high school kids will ask, who's at the middle school if you're here? Like, so it completely flipped from, why are you here? What happened over the years to, if you're here, who's over there? Because you're supposed to be over there, and now you're here, and these are high school kids. So, it does, I didn't understand it when you're in it, but that's all part of it. It's not, you're never going to see it, stat, you're never going to see that answer. When kids are looking for you, or they go to a town event and they're looking for you specifically, or asking and annoying all my coworkers, is he here? Where is he? Those kind of things. And, it's all the simple stuff. Halloween safety talks, and then you're not there for whatever reason, or you can't go because something else happened, and then you look at the kids' faces the next day, and, November 1st, and you missed it. They're like, you didn't bring your pencils. So, like, your kid, like, where are the... So there's a lot of expectations once it starts, and it's a lot. But it's definitely probably, so far, probably the greatest thing I got involved in this profession so far. I don't know what's going to top it. I don't think I'll be a chief.
You won't be chief.
Yeah. I don't think it's just not my thing. People are, I don't know if I'm going to be able to top being involved in that. So.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. This was really helpful. Thank you for joining us this evening.
You're welcome.
Makes a
I
huge
vote yes for
difference.
it.
Okay. So we'll go through just a couple more data points to share with you to help round out the board's decision that you need to make this evening. As you can see, and you have the full survey in your packets, in the board packet, if you want to look at it a little more closely. But we asked 4 questions to get a gauge of, who was responding. So you can see more than half of the respondents were parents. Almost a quarter of the respondents were staff members. We did have almost 13% of our students grades 8 and up respond, and some members that do not have children in the school district, and that's the blue and the purple, a little under 10%. So it's 749 people in our community responded to this survey. That's an excellent response. And then we just had 3 simple questions. Do you think that Granby schools should add a school resource officer? Yes, no, or I'm not sure. 80% of the respondents said that they did think we should consider adding it. The next question was about budget. I was criticized a little bit for not giving an unsure option, but when you're in the voting booth, it's either a yes or a no. So I thought it important to push people a little bit to say, like, yes, not only do I support it, but I support it with a budget, potential increase to our budget. 79% of the respondents said, that they do support this item in the budget. And then we had about just over 81% of the respondents say that they do believe that an SRO would be beneficial, that we would see benefits from that. And the remainder of the survey was feedback, open-ended feedback. And I will tell you, we had upwards of 675, 700 people write comments. And so huge thank you to Linda Powell for sorting through all of those comments. We categorized them by positive feedback, negative feedback, and the overwhelming majority of the folks that took time to write had questions or advice or their own experiences, that were positive. Over 80% of the people responded favorably. We heard things that fell into these categories. I really believe this will enhance our school safety. I see the value of a positive relationship, the mentoring quality, the opportunity to have an ally in our community, and someone that's advocating for students, the alignment with surrounding districts and sort of like best practice of inviting a law enforcement officer into our school district to be a member of our community, and the long-term benefits for Granby. in that same regard. The concerns were voiced also by people that voted yes. You know, people said, yes, I think this is a good idea, and I'm a little concerned about. And so I really appreciate that people overwhelmingly did support it, but they also were, you know, pushing us with some critical feedback and things to think about. The cost and the budget impact is always something that we need to consider. I'm going to talk about that in a moment. There was a lot of support around the idea that, you know, please don't forget that mental health is really important. And do we have adequate mental health supports in our school district, which I'll speak to. There were some fears shared around profiling or the criminalization of student behavior. If you Google school resource officer, there is data that supports there's, you know, an uptick in, you know, arrests, or there's some fears around racial profiling. I have had hours and hours of conversation with our chief, and I feel strongly that we are in the same mind, and I know you can speak to this at length if we give you the mic. So, you know, we do take those things very seriously. And then there were some concerns voiced around a weapon in school, an armed officer, and what is the value of that? And I'm going to ask Chief Sansom to speak about that in a moment. The questions seem to fall into these categories. SRO, the role and responsibility, which we've already been speaking to, the budget, justification, like how do we know that this is going to work? And really, what does it look like? How do we prepare? And again, Captain Laflamme and Chief Sansom spoke to this last time, but if necessary, I'll have them remind us around some of those things. So I'm just going to do a quick Q&A. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this. Most of the questions are fairly simple to answer. So first is the budget. How will this be funded? You may recall that I provided a placeholder of about $100,000 in our +1 budget for this purpose. And so if you vote to support this evening, we will move that forward to the superintendent's proposed budget in a few weeks. The salary is approximately $98,000. And then there's some benefits, which we just did the calculations on over the last few days, and that's about $60,000, which I know is higher than you might think. But this includes health care, pension, life insurance, long-term disability, taxes, Social Security, all those things. And so we're looking at a total cost of about $158,000 for this position. And so we wanted to be super transparent about what the cost is at this moment. Some of the questions that came forward are here. You know, is this a comparable salary? You know, yes, it is. Is this person making more, or why is this person making more than an average, you know, patrol officer? They're not. We received this data from the town to help us with our calculations. What other expenses could we maybe trim back on? So yes, of course, we're looking at that. I don't believe overtime would be a sufficient way, you know, to give current officers overtime. There are restrictions on how many hours we can work in this type of a role, and it would be more costly to pay overtime. It's usually like a time and a half situation or something like that. Our police force in Granby is already stretched as thin as they can be stretched. And so we really want this to augment our current police force with a dedicated officer for the schools. We have such a beautiful relationship, and they're often working side by side with us, but as you've heard tonight, this would allow us to have that dedicated officer. We have not explored alternative security measures. There are many models out there, you know, security guards. I thought Chief Sansom would laugh at this, staging old police vehicles outside. My brother lives in the Keys, and everywhere you go, there's an old patrol car parked. It makes you slow down for about 5 seconds, and then you speed right back. Yeah, it's good.
It's not even, yeah. Sorry, Chief, I know we've talked about this before, but I just came back from one of my New York trips, and off the Cross Island, there's an old NYPD car. I don't slow down.
You
So kind of like what you're saying, right? They ask you the other question, why is this car here, why is this car not there? It's just-
But we did hear, I didn't write every question, obviously, and there were a number of questions that I folded into one, what other alternatives are we looking at? And the answer, in honesty, is that we have not explored those other options. We feel this is the best, and so we came to you with this first. Roles and responsibilities, I think we've talked about this a lot in the past and this evening. There are some questions about visibility at the other schools. Would every school be involved? Absolutely. What other role would the school resource officer play? And as you heard this evening, they're very much a member of the team. And they'd be present and engaged and involved in lots and lots of ways. Another common question is the first one here: would they be available outside of those traditional school hours? And I think it's a decision that we have to make. We could certainly flex some time if necessary. I think we would still be partnering with the Granby Police Department for those big events where we need crowd control and traffic control. We have one valuable person whose primary responsibility would be with our students and staff throughout the day. But I can imagine that, football games and concerts and events like that would be something that a school resource officer would enjoy being at, and we would welcome them to be a part of the community for that added safety factor. We've talked about this with the help of Sergeant Cushman, and I really answer, how will they spend their time? It's for us to decide. I do really love the programmatic approach, particularly with our elementary schools, bicycle safety, internet safety, coming in and doing read alouds with kids and that sort of thing. And the benefit for us, unlike Simsbury, our schools are in close proximity to each other. Granby is spread out a bit for a smaller community, but our schools, you can get to all of them within a matter of minutes. And so we would develop a schedule in concert with the administrative team that works best for our school district. And I think that our secondary campus would be prioritized for sure. A number of people asked about, what proof do you have? What does the data say about the improvements to safety and the reduction of incidents? The effectiveness of an SRO is a debatable topic. And I think we heard this evening that some of it is about the things that are really hard to measure. I will say anecdotally, since doing this research and working with the chief and our staff to present this to you as an idea over the last couple of months, there have been a number of times where we have been managing an incident where I've said, if we had had an SRO, we might not have had to do X. I have Kurt and Scott on speed dial weekends, evenings, all the time. And they do a phenomenal job knowing our community, but they're not in the school. They don't have that added layer that an SRO would have. And so I will tell you anecdotally, just in the last few months, we've been able to identify a number of times where if we had had an SRO and they had had a relationship with a particular child, maybe instead of pushing that button, we could have asked you to walk into a particular space because you had that added protection and expertise to speak to a child to see what their intentions were. So I think it's a gray area that's hard to measure, but I really believe that if the program is developed to meet our needs and it's done well, the results will absolutely be favorable. But if you research this, and I encourage you to do so, I've spent a number of months doing that. The truth is that there are opinions on both sides. Have teachers and staff? Yes, they really want an SRO. They support it wholeheartedly. They're excited about that. It was something I've been asked about since I started in the district. And a positive relationship with a law enforcement officer is about that prevention of crime. Would additional deans, social workers, I did just a separate slide on mental health. We believe, and you have heard from me a number of times, that it's so beneficial, extremely important for our students to have adequate mental health supports. We see an SRO as an added member of that team. We do have full-time social workers, full-time school psychologists in all of our buildings. We have BCBA currently on staff, and in the budget, you see that we wish to increase. We have our special education staff that is highly trained, our school counseling staff. We do have many layers to that mental health support, and we will continue to advocate to grow those supports as well. But, we believe that the school resource officer adds that unique perspective and level of expertise. So that's the summary of the questions. In your packets, you do have more in-depth information that we collected from the narrative feedback, if you want to review that. But at this time, I really want to be able to answer any lingering questions from the board members, because this is an action item tonight, so I just open it to you for any questions.
Yeah, but before I open it up again to everyone for questions, I just want to thank everyone again, our police. The fact that we had such a high response to this, and it was such a positive response, just emphasizes the importance of our relationship with the Granby Police Department. So thank you for all you do for us. Thank you, Sergeant, for joining us this evening. It's just been incredibly helpful. This is a big decision for us, and having as much information and as many perspectives as possible really makes it a better decision. So we appreciate you, and thank you for that. Does anyone on the board have additional questions they'd like to raise?
Just to clarify, you'll have to revise the +1 to reflect the change in the estimate of the cost?
So I won't revise
SRO?
the +1 because that's what we knew at the time, just
Okay.
like the HVAC. But now I'm already developing the superintendent's proposed budget. And
Sure.
so that budget will reflect
The actual cost?
will be much more detailed focused with our costs in every regard. And this would be the number that you would see, the 158,000.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
You got it.
It just, I think I already said this last meeting, but when I was a principal, I did not have an SRO, and that presented a lot of challenges. We had a resident trooper, and sometimes when he wasn't on duty, they'd call somebody in off the troop H off of 91 to deal with a student situation, and it's very challenging for them to come in off the street when they're not familiar with the kids, maybe not even how these laws apply to young people, because sometimes there's some nuance. And having an SRO in Avon and West Hartford is just such a game changer. You can't speak to how many situations get de-escalated just by virtue of knowing who the kids are and who the ones who are likely to have challenges, and then how to interact with them. And it's just, I think it's a really powerful tool. So I support it.
Thank you.
I have more of a comment than a question that, even driving here today, I wasn't sure how I was going to vote on this situation. And it's not because I haven't had great professional relationships as an educator with SROs, because I have worked with several, and it's been excellent for me personally. I think that the struggle I have is that in our tight budget climate, that we are looking at funding a number of potential new positions in our schools. And the idea that it falls to our board to help support our police department that has been underfunded and understaffed for years is kind of a hard pill for me to swallow. And I know it's not just our PD. I know our fire department and our ambulance in this town also could use more staffing and more funding. And I guess I'm more frustrated that all of this position is falling to us as a board, when so many other towns, the Board of Ed is not funding 100% of the position. And that is my struggle. It's not that I don't believe in school resource officers, because I do, but the idea of the money coming from us when we're going to have to make cuts to some of those other potentially some of those other initiatives that we would really like to spend money on, or just the appearance that our costs keep going up as a Board of Ed, and that we're not looking to cut, and that our percent is going up every year. It pains me that this position would be a part of that perception.
Thank you for sharing that. It is something that we'll have to keep in mind moving forward as well. All right, do I have a motion, or are there any additional questions or comments? I'm sorry. All right, do I have a motion?
I'll move that the Granby Board of Education approve, nope. I'll move that the Granby Board of Education approve a school resource officer program for Granby Public Schools.
Do I have a second? Thank you, Dave. Any further discussion on this issue? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carries. Thank you. And now you can add that into the budget a little bit more officially.
Yeah, so, you've just voted to support the addition of the program. And now we will get to work to look at the budget impact. As Liz stated, it is going to have an impact to the budget. We feel strongly that it's an important priority for the school district. We have many priorities, right? And so we will work together to propose to you in March 5th how we might make this work in our budget, what we would suggest we pare back on, or in order to help our priorities come to fruition. And that, in my mind, is a separate decision around the budget allocation. But this evening, you have voted to support the SRO program, and now we will get to work on those additional steps. I thank the board. This is a big decision for Granby Public Schools. I think it's an important one. And we have a vision of a school district that supports the whole child, all facets of our students and our families. And I think that this will be a big step in the right direction to allow us to realize that expectation. So thank you for your support. Huge thank you to Chief Sansom and Captain LaFlamme and Sergeant Cushman for being here this evening. I know you had to take time out of your personal schedules to be here, and I'm greatly appreciative.
And this just was a very informative process for me. In the beginning, I felt very differently about this program, but you really educated me in regard to the benefits and how we could make the program work for Granby and make it work for every student. So thank you. Okay, next up, minutes. Do I have a motion in regard to the January 15th minutes?
Can we tell them that if they want to leave, they can leave? I mean, they've been here long enough.
You're not obligated to stay. Yes.
Tell law enforcement.
It's just going to come.
That's what I was reading
Yeah.
by accident. I move that the Granby Board of Education approve the minutes from the January 15th, 2025 Board of Education meeting.
Second. Thank you. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions?
I abstain.
Okay, one abstention on the minutes. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Have a good night.
Thank you.
Be safe tomorrow.
Good choice.
Yes. All right, moving along to committee reports. Board standing committee reports, curriculum, policy, technology, communication met this evening. Karen?
Yep, I'm going to be quick since the hour is late.
It is.
So our Assistant Superintendent Jennifer Parsons shared with us an update, including the teacher evaluation plan. Just very quickly, there's been changes this year, and one of the benefits to that is that it has allowed for more meaningful conversations to really take place between educators and administrators. Also, Assistant Superintendent Parsons talked to us about student assessment data and a platform called EduClimber, used for storing data. She also filled us in on the Wellness Committee, and one of the highlights was that on the January 29th half-day PD, or early release PD, there was a wellness fair for staff, and it included a lot of great things, including yoga, nutrition, and more. It was very well received. And we wrapped things up with a report on the secondary scheduling committee. The goal was to align the bell schedules between the middle school and high school. Assistant Superintendent Parsons explained the process to us by which the committee went about their work, identified 4 priorities, the timeline, gave us an overview of the current middle school and high school schedules, and also shared some next steps. And finally, we wrapped things up with a policy review update. Thank you.
Does anyone have any questions for Karen? Thank you, Karen. Okay, thank you. Finance, personnel, facilities, approved minutes are attached in the packet, and then we will be meeting on February, what is that?
2 weeks.
2 weeks from tonight.
2 weeks from tonight, so
19th.
19th, that's it. Thank you for mathing for me.
It's hard work.
It is. Other board-related reports, CREC, CABE, do we have any updates there? I'm aware of. Granby Education Foundation?
They met last week. A substantial grant was just awarded for a courtyard project at Wells Road. There's a student-led group that has been designing a new courtyard scheme for the courtyard, and the money is to help build what they have designed, which is pretty cool.
That's great.
And there are 2 new members of the GEF board, including our own Rosemary Weber, who is now on the Granby Education Foundation. And the Granby preparation, the big fundraiser, is in full swing. So they are looking for event sponsors, teams, and auction items. So if you know a business that might be interested in sponsoring, or if you want to join, they are looking. I know.
Excellent. All right, that's all great to hear. Is this the same project? Was it led by Meg Jabali?
Yes.
Yeah, excellent. Yeah, she was here, was it last year?
Yeah.
Last year.
That's great. So she's had a courtyard club of kids that chose to be involved,
That's
which is great. So it's
wonderful.
going to have some sensory ideas. So hopefully the courtyard will get more use.
Okay.
Very popular club, by the way.
Excellent. I mean, the space there just to improve on it is fantastic.
Yeah.
All right, the calendar of events is attached in the back. I won't go through it all. Do we have any board member announcements? Anyone? Okay. Action items?
I didn't hear any this evening.
I don't think so. Superintendent's report.
Okay, so I will be brief because we've already spoken about a number of things. We did just celebrate the 100th day of school, so that's always exciting. And I was really impressed by some of the ways that our administrators and staff incorporated that 100th day around some of our themes of connection and ongoing kindness efforts. That was really great. You've already heard about our successful PD day. Mrs. Bava is back. So we want to give a big thank you to Megan Mazzei, who assisted us as interim principal at Kelly Lane. And we're really happy to have Colleen Bava back from her brief medical leave. This week is National School Counselors Week, so please be sure to thank your school counselors. Next week is Random Acts of Kindness Week, so you'll be seeing some fun things coming home from our schools. And kindergarten registration is open. If you are looking to register a kindergartner or you have a neighbor of a young person, please direct them to our website for more information. I think Monica and I both will be attending the CABE Legislative Breakfast coming up shortly at the state capitol. If any members of the Board of Ed wish to attend, just reach out to Linda and she can assist you with that. I am planning to hold 2 superintendent community conversations via Zoom. One Thursday, February 20th in the morning, and one Thursday, February 27th in the evening to make myself accessible to community members and parents that wish to learn more about the budget process or have any questions for me. We did that last year and it was really successful. All that information will be out on my social media and website. It's in the drummer, all that sort of thing. So I hope people will take advantage. And our next meeting, as we just calculated, is Wednesday, February 19th.
And is it the next meeting or the meeting after the first meeting in March where we see the superintendent's budget?
March 5th is the meeting for the superintendent's budget. We are awaiting guidance from the Board of Finance. We expect to receive that on Monday, February 10th. Nikki Stevenson, Director of Finance, and myself and the administrative team are already hard at work to identify priorities and some revisions to be able to bring to the board on that March 5th date. Wasn't I just sharpening pencils today? It's so loud, that pencil sharpener. No joke, I really was.
You didn't put a new one in the budget?
How many
I certainly did. I was cracking a lot of tips, trying to get it where it needs to be. Not a fun process, but an important one.
Thank you very much. I appreciate the update. Okay. Do I have a motion?
I move that we adjourn this meeting.
Second?
Second.
Oh, who gets the second?
Ali, I think Ali got it.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Thank you. This meeting is now adjourned.
Somebody opposing it.